Hi, this is Jackie Walker from Red Line TV, and we've been off for a bit, but we're back with it. And we're starting with some very interesting interviews. The first one, which is Ken Loach, we actually recorded a few months ago, but because of what's been going on, we just thought it would be really useful to remind ourselves what's been going on. Of course, what started this last brouhaha is the film, The Big Lie, which has caused a massive furore and has had the whole of the establishment really screaming out for it to be banned. Really interesting because they've been screaming out to ban it while insisting they're not banning it because, of course, they put themselves out to be liberals. Now, the interesting thing about this is that most of the people in the film, if not all, are actually Jewish, right from the narrator to the contributors, the direct contributors who are being actually asked questions. But don't worry, of course, that doesn't stop them being called anti-Semites. Now, what's really shocking, of course, is how bad this is and how bad it still is. And anybody who thought, actually, it will go away, they've got rid of Corbyn, it will just go away, it's totally wrong. They're not just interested in getting rid of Corbyn, they're interested in smashing the whole left. And the consequences of that, they're really not worried about. Now, any of you who know your history will know that one of the biggest nails in the coffin to democracy and humanity in terms of 1930s Germany was the destruction of the left. Because actually, when the time came, what that meant was the left wasn't actually there to fight the real racists to come. Now, these people, they actually don't care. They are the zealots. They are the establishment who are, let's recall, at the point where they are so terrified by having nearly lost power, they really are not thinking even 2 steps ahead. Anyway, see what you think. Here's the interview with the wonderful Ken Loach. So, given your long record of doing what they always say, speaking for those who haven't got the voice, that's what, if you look up what does Ken Loach do, that's the first line they put. Given that I think your whole catalogue of work would reflect that, why have they allowed you to keep talking?
It's a good question. I mean, I wouldn't say those who have no voice, but those whose voices aren't heard, really. We've been very lucky. I've had huge strokes of luck, Jackie. First stroke of luck was to join the bunch, the group that I talked about making contemporary TV drama. Meet brilliant writers, brilliant people who were political. And this was the 1960s, the new left, neither Washington nor Moscow was one of the slogans. That was a very political time. We read the books. I mean, I'd been at university, but I hadn't really read properly. That's when a group of us really read the basic texts of socialism, of struggle, of revolution. And you see very clearly the irreconcilable conflict at the heart of society between those who have to sell their labor and those who own and control the means of production and the rest. And from that's been our kind of our criterion from then on. Secondly, was meeting great writers, and the producer Tony Garnis I worked with for a long time, writers like Jim Allen, Barry Hines, and later Paul Laverty. We've worked together for 30 odd years. And then we had 2 big strokes of luck. We did a couple of films for the BBC called Up the Junction and Cathy Come Home. It just struck a nerve. We were lucky, you can work very hard on something and it doesn't connect. And then sometimes it does. And that one did. And people remembered it. And then a few years later, we made a film called Kess about a boy who trains a kestrel who's set, his life is set on a course that is for unskilled manual labor. And in the film, you see his talent, his thoughtfulness, his ability, his empathy with a bird that the world will never show to him. And it just hit a nerve. And people remember that. So after that, had bad periods, good periods and bad periods. But when I got the chance again to make films after the 80s, which had been a bleak period for everyone, we were able gradually to have a financial setup which relies on France and other European countries, Italy, often Belgium and the Netherlands, Japan, and Britain to some extent. In essence, I mean, they're pursuing the same objectives as they did before and always have done. The politics of the Labour right is that they are social democrats, right-wing social democrats. The essence of their politics is the boss has got to make a profit before you can defend your jobs, wages and conditions. Therefore, in the end, the priority is for business to succeed. Therefore, you cannot have strong trade unions because that'll demand more for the cost of labour than the employers see as enabling them to make a profit. Their view is that private business has to make a profit in order to fund public services. Our position, I think, is that this conflict will intensify as the demands as monopolies increase and as they consume the world's resources. And as they compete, the competition gets harsher and harsher between big corporations. Therefore, there is a constant pressure on labour, and they are pushed. Their own politics pushes them to the right, and therefore, their idea that somehow you have to contact some mythical centre ground means that the centre ground is moving to the right, and they will move with it. And the Tories have moved to the right post Thatcher. Thatcher established a certain level of exploitation that has to increase because their system demands it. Therefore, they have to go further to the right, and Labour has to follow them. And Starmer's idea, he'll be 1 degree more tolerant, more acceptable than the Tories, and however far they go, he will just keep moving with them to be 1 degree to the left of them. And that means that he's on hard Thatcherite ground now. His politics and those who support him. The Tories are far more, well, they have class loyalty, which the Social Democrats never have, right-wing Social Democrats never have, cannot have because they're not representing working class interests. Starmer's line, I'll keep the radical programme, I'll unite the party. He put his arm around Jeremy Corbyn. What a liar. Absolutely, it makes me angry to think of it. Yeah. Blatant liar. He knew exactly what he would do, and those around him knew. In fact, all their advisors knew. Everybody, the press knew. The wretched Guardian knew. The BBC knew. That was the way he had to go. And he had to destroy Corbyn, or try to. What I guess took people by surprise was the weapon they chose. And you and I, and you more than me, I'm afraid, and you've been very brave in it, have been abused as racists. That was the weapon they chose. And when the BBC or the Guardian wanted somebody to interview, to attack Corbyn, they didn't go to the Tories, they went to the Labour right wing. So they don't change. It is true to its politics since Ramsay MacDonald turned his back on the miners in 26. It hasn't changed.
To end with, for me, I don't kind of intellectualize it. I don't sit here thinking, what is the purpose? I think more like there's only one alternative for me. There's only one thing I can do, which is to keep doing the revolutionary act of telling the truth. If you were going to think, what's your purpose at this point in the political cycle, what would it be?
There's a few lines of Brecht that I kind of refer to every now and then. I think in one of his poems he wrote, I always thought the simplest of words would suffice. When we say what things are like, it breaks the hearts of all. That you go down if you don't fight is surely clear to you. And I think those three thoughts sum it up, really. To tell the truth as simply and as clearly and but with as much nuance and sensitivity as you can. Simply is not simplified, but with clarity. And that if you do that, it must touch people. It must touch people of good conscience. It must touch people with an open mind. I guess the thing that I interpose in that is to set that in a context so that if you tell a simple story, it should shine a light right to the heart of that essential conflict we talked about earlier. So it isn't just, the solution can never be pass the hat round. It's not an appeal for charity. It's an appeal for justice, and the justice has to be justified by the clarity with which you expose that fundamental conflict that cannot be resolved within the system itself. In the end, it has to be a call to arms. I don't mean physically on the streets with guns. I mean a call to mobilize. Again, to another quote, the old American wobble is agitate, educate, organize. And you have to do each. And films can agitate, can educate a little bit, but not a lot. But they can't organize at all. And in the end, it's the organization that we need. And that's where we're failing. And that's a huge challenge for the left. If the stakes now are so high, we can see we can think to the next generation, we'll have another go. The planet is collapsing around us. If the left fails, it's a massive failure. And I'm desperate that we find a way to unite the left, both inside and outside the Labour Party, because the chances are running out, and we have to do that in a way that brings everyone together. It should be led by the unions. The big campaigns can step forward, but we have to do it.
So the next interview we'll be doing actually will be with Paul Laverty. Now, any of you who think you don't know Paul Laverty, I think you really do know him, because if you've watched many of Ken Loach's films, you'd know he is the screenwriter of those films. He's a very, very interesting person, and I talked to him not just about what's happening now, but what brought him to screenwriting and what he's trying to do with his screenwriting. So what I'm interested in is seeing how much his politics are important to what he writes. And he's also going to be telling us something about the newest film, Royal Oak, which I think everybody is really looking forward to. After that is an interview I did with Roger Waters. That was a very powerful and moving interview. In fact, both of us ended up kind of in tears about it. He's a very interesting guy. So look out for that one. That will be next in line. After that, who knows where the red line will go. But wherever it is, it will be doing what it intends to do, which is to tell the truth without fear and to communicate what we need to do as a movement. See you in the next interview.